The flash of a camera's bulb was blinding, but not as blinding as the lie Justin Croft was living. Tonight was his coronation, the annual Croft Foundation charity ball, where the city's elite gathered to applaud his generosity. By his side, radiant in emerald silk, was Scarlett Vance, his head of marketing, her hand resting possessively on his arm. She was smiling a picture of triumph, basking in the glow of a man she believed would soon be hers. The whispers in the grand ballroom all said the same thing. It was only a matter of time before his quiet, elegant wife was replaced. But they didn't know that miles away a different story was unfolding. A story sealed in a manila envelope, confirmed by a lab, and carried by a woman who had decided that if her world was going to burn, she would be the one to light the match. Eleanor Croft traced the rim of her porcelain teacup, the steam warming her face. From the panoramic window of their penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, New York City, glittered like a field of scattered diamonds. It was a view that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, a constant shimmering reminder of the life her husband Justin Croft had built. He was the golden boy of the tech world, the charismatic CEO of Innovate Dynamics, a company that had revolutionized data security. To the world, he was a visionary. To her, for the past 7 years, he had been her husband. Lately, however, he felt more like a stranger who shared her bed. The signs had been small at first, easily dismissed. Late nights at the office became entire weekends. Business trips extended without explanation. The easy intimacy they once shared, the laughter that used to echo through their sprawling home, had been replaced by a polite, sterile silence. When she tried to talk to him, his eyes would be fixed on his phone, his fingers typing furiously. "It's just this new merger, Ellie," he'd say, the pet name feeling like a relic from another era. "Things are crazy right now. It'll calm down soon." But it never did. The distance grew into a chasm. Her hand drifted down to rest on the gentle curve of her stomach. 5 months. 5 months, carrying their child, a secret she had held close, waiting for the perfect moment to tell him. She had imagined a quiet dinner, just the two of them, the city lights twinkling below, as she placed his hand on her belly and watched his face break into a genuine, unguarded smile. But the perfect moment never came. The space between them was too crowded with unspoken things. Her suspicion began to curdle into a sick certainty a month ago. Justin had been on a business trip to San Francisco. She'd been sorting through his credit card statements for their accountant when she saw a charge that made her breath catch. The St. Regis, New York, a 2-night stay. During the exact dates he was supposedly on the West Coast. She had confronted him, her heart hammering against her ribs. He'd laughed it off, a smooth, practiced sound. "Oh, that. I booked it for a client, a thank you gift. Must have used the wrong card. I'll get it sorted, sweetheart. Don't you worry your pretty head about it." He'd kissed her forehead, his lips cool and dismissive, and she had let it go. Or rather, she had pretended to. The name Scarlett Vance was a whisper at first, a ghost in the periphery. Eleanor had seen her at company events, of course. She was Justin's star executive, the fiercely ambitious head of marketing he'd personally scouted from a rival firm. She was everything Eleanor wasn't: sharp, loud, dressed in bold colors that demanded attention. She moved with the predatory grace of a woman who knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't afraid to take it. Eleanor had watched the way Justin looked at her, a spark of something more than professional appreciation in his eyes. She had told herself she was being paranoid insecure. The final brutal piece of evidence came not from a PI, but from a simple, careless mistake. Justin's laptop was connected to their family's cloud account. One evening, while searching for a photo of their trip to Italy, a different folder synced automatically. SV. Private. Her fingers trembled as she clicked it open. It was all there. Dozens of photos. Scarlett and Justin on a boat, the sun kissing their skin. Scarlett in a slinky dress, Justin's arm wrapped tightly around her waist at a bar Eleanor didn't recognize. The most damning was a short video clearly taken by Justin. Scarlett was lounging on a hotel bed, a hotel room Eleanor recognized from its distinctive artwork as the St. Regis, wearing one of Justin's dress shirts, and nothing else, laughing as she spoke to him. "When are you going to tell her, Jules?" Scarlett's voice was a playful purr. "I'm tired of being your dirty little secret. I want the world to know you're mine." Justin's voice off camera was a low murmur. "Soon, baby. The timing has to be perfect. The divorce needs to be handled delicately. Just a little more patience." The screen went black, but the images were burned into Eleanor's mind. The gilded cage she lived in suddenly felt suffocating, its golden bars cold and sharp. All the excuses, all the reassurances, all the times he'd called her crazy or paranoid, it was all a lie. A carefully constructed performance to keep her placid while he built a new life with another woman. That night, something inside her broke. But it wasn't her spirit. It was the dam of grief and denial. And in its place, a cold, hard clarity began to form. He had called her delicate. He had underestimated her. He thought she would crumble, sign whatever papers his lawyers put in front of her, and disappear quietly with a comfortable settlement. He was wrong. She would not disappear. She would not be delicate. Her hand rested on her unborn child, a silent promise. This is for us. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the child he had created, and then so carelessly betrayed. The next morning she made 2 phone calls. The first was to the most ruthless divorce attorney in New York City. The second was to a private genetics lab, inquiring about something she'd only read about, a non-invasive prenatal paternity test. It could be done with a simple blood draw from the mother and a cheek swab from the potential father. Getting Justin's DNA would be the easy part. His toothbrush was in their bathroom. The rest would be war. The offices of Sterling Black and Associates were located in a sleek, anonymous glass tower in Midtown, a place where fortunes were dismantled and futures were rewritten with the stroke of a pen. Eleanor sat opposite Delilah Sterling, a woman whose reputation preceded her. Delilah was in her late 50s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that could make billionaires tremble. Eleanor laid out her story with unnerving calm, her voice never wavering. She presented the credit card statements, the synced photo folder on a flash drive, and the timeline of Justin's lies. Delilah listened, her steepled fingers resting on her chin, her expression unreadable. "Most women in your position come in here with tears," Delilah noted when Eleanor had finished. "You haven't shed one." "My tears won't get me what I want," Eleanor replied, her voice as cool as the marble table between them. "And what is that, Mrs. Croft? I want to be free of him, but I will not be erased. I helped him build that company. My inheritance was his seed money. My social connections opened the doors his new money couldn't. I will not be paid off and discarded like a failed prototype." Her gaze was direct. "And most importantly, he will acknowledge his child. Publicly. Irrefutably." Delilah nodded slowly, a faint glimmer of respect in her eyes. "Irrefutable proof is the bedrock of any good strategy. What do you have in mind?" I've scheduled an IP test, Eleanor said. I have a sample of his DNA. The lab will have the results in 7 to 10 business days. This time, Delilah allowed a small, sharp smile. Excellent. While we wait for that, my team will start a forensic audit of your shared finances. Justin Croft presents himself as a self-made man. Let's see how much of his making was actually yours, and we'll hire a discreet investigator to document his relationship with Ms. Vance. We need a clear, unbroken pattern of behavior. The investigator they hired was a man named Michael Donovan, a former NYPD detective with a knack for blending into the background. His reports arrived daily in a coded email painting a sordid picture of Justin's double life. Donovan chronicled lunches at out-of-the-way bistros, late-night entries into a luxury condo in Soho, registered to a shell corporation, and weekend trips to the Hamptons. The condo was the key. Justin had told Eleanor he kept it as a quiet place to work away from the distractions of the office. It was, in fact, the love nest he had set up for Scarlett. Donovan's photos were grainy but undeniable. Justin and Scarlett kissing on the balcony. Scarlett using a key to let herself in. The two of them emerging on a Sunday morning, looking like any other couple. As the days crawled by, Eleanor lived in a state of suspended animation. She played the part of the devoted wife perfectly. She asked about his day, feigned interest in his fabricated stories of late-night coding sessions, and even massaged his shoulders when he complained of stress. Each touch was a betrayal to herself, but it was necessary. He could not suspect a thing. The element of surprise was her most powerful weapon. One of Donovan's reports contained a peculiar detail. Subject Vance has had 2 observed appointments in the last 10 days at the Park Avenue Women's Health Clinic. Both times, Subject Croft waited in the car. Eleanor's blood ran cold. It could be anything, of course, but combined with everything else, a dark, chilling possibility began to form in her mind. Was it possible? Could he be that reckless, that cruel? The day the email from the lab arrived, Eleanor's hands were shaking so badly she could barely click the mouse. The subject line was simple: "Your results are ready." She took a deep breath, opened the attached PDF, and scrolled down past the medical jargon to the conclusion. Probability of paternity: 99.999%. A wave of something unidentifiable washed over her. It wasn't relief, not exactly. It was confirmation. A heavy, solid weight of truth in a sea of lies. This document was her shield and her sword. This was the proof that no one, not Justin, not his lawyers, not the world could deny. That evening, the invitation arrived. It was embossed on heavy, cream-colored cardstock, the gold lettering announcing the 4th annual Croft Foundation Charity Ball. It was Justin's signature event, the pinnacle of his public philanthropy. All of New York's high society would be there. He would be on stage, celebrated as a titan of industry and a benevolent humanitarian. And by his side, Donovan's latest report confirmed would be Scarlett Vance. Justin had told the event organizers she was his official +1, citing that his wife was feeling under the weather. Eleanor looked at the invitation, then at the printed paternity test results on her desk. The venue was the grand ballroom at the Pierre, a stage, an audience, the press. The timing, as Justin had told Scarlett in that video, had to be perfect, and it would be. But it would be her timing, not his. She called Delilah Sterling. "I have the results," she said. "It's confirmed." "Good." Delilah's voice was brisk. "We can file Monday morning." "No." Eleanor said, a plan crystallizing in her mind, as audacious as it was terrifying. We're not filing on Monday. I know when and where I'm going to confront him, and I'm going to do it in a way that he can never recover from." She told Delilah the plan. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Delilah spoke, a low whistle of admiration in her tone. "Mrs. Croft," she said, "they are going to write books about you." The grand ballroom at the Pierre was a cathedral of opulence, soaring ceilings dripped with crystal chandeliers, casting a warm, golden light over the city's most powerful and influential figures. The air hummed with the clinking of champagne flutes, polite laughter, and the subtle, relentless networking of the elite. At the center of this glittering universe stood Justin Croft. He was in his element, dressed in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. He moved through the crowd with an easy, practiced charm, shaking hands with senators, laughing with bank presidents, and clapping tech rivals on the back. He was the sun, and everyone in this room was a planet orbiting him, drawn in by his gravity and his wealth. And tonight his brightest, closest satellite was Scarlett Vance. She was a vision in an emerald-green floor-length gown that clung to her every curve. Her auburn hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and diamonds glittered at her ears and throat. She stood beside Justin, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm, her smile a mixture of pride and possessiveness. She met the curious and envious glances of the other guests with a serene confidence. Her moment had arrived. For weeks, Justin had been preparing her for this. "It's our coming-out party, Scar," he'd whispered to her in their Soho condo. "We have to be a team. Show them we're a unit, a power couple. Once the divorce from Eleanor is announced next week, no one will even be surprised." He had fed her a carefully curated story of a marriage that was already dead, a union of convenience with a woman who was emotionally distant and uninterested in his world. "She's old money, Scarlett," he'd explained. "She never really understood my ambition. We're just roommates. The divorce will be amicable, a simple parting of ways." Scarlett believed him. She had to. She had staked her entire career, her entire future, on this belief. She loved the thrill of their secret affair, but she craved the legitimacy of being the woman on the arm of Justin Croft, not in the shadows, but in the spotlight. Tonight, that spotlight felt warm and wonderful. "You're staring," Justin murmured, his lips brushing her ear, sending a shiver down her spine. "I'm just so proud of you," she breathed, looking up at him. "Everything you've built, the foundation, the company, us." "This is just the beginning," he promised, giving her hand a squeeze. His eyes scanned the room, a king surveying his court. Everything was going according to plan. The foundation was set to announce a record-breaking donation to the Children's Hospital. The press was here in force. His reputation as a philanthropist was more secure than ever, a perfect shield for the messy personal business to come. He'd have his lawyers serve Eleanor the papers on Monday. By then, the narrative would be set. Justin Croft, the brilliant humanitarian, amicably splitting from his quiet wife and finding new happiness with his dynamic partner, Scarlett Vance. It was clean. It was manageable. A well-known society columnist, Brenda Maxwell, approached them, her pen poised over her notepad. "Justin, Scarlett, you two look absolutely stunning together. The talk of the town, Scarlett, that dress is to die for. Tell me, is this an official debut for you two as a couple?" Before Justin could give his carefully rehearsed, non-committal answer, Scarlett beamed. "You could say that, Brenda. We're very happy." It was a bolder statement than they had agreed upon, but Justin let it slide. Her eagerness was part of her charm. As the evening wore on, the grand narrative of Justin Croft, the benevolent genius, was woven with every speech and toast. He took the stage to a thunderous ovation, the lights glinting off his perfect white teeth. Generosity, he began, his voice resonating with practiced sincerity, is not about giving what you have left over. It's about giving a piece of yourself. It's about building a legacy, about creating a better future for our children. Scarlett watched from a front-row table, her heart swelling with adoration. He was magnificent. This was the man she was going to spend her life with, the father of the child she was now secretly, thrillingly carrying. She hadn't told him yet. It was her trump card, the final piece that would cement her place in his life forever. She imagined telling him tonight after the gala, the two of them wrapped in each other's arms, celebrating their public triumph. Miles away in her silent apartment, Eleanor Croft was also preparing. She stood before a full-length mirror, not in a ball gown, but in a simple, impeccably tailored navy blue dress. It was elegant, professional, and understated. It was armor. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, neat bun. Her makeup was minimal. She did not look like a woman scorned about to cause a scene. She looked like a CEO about to chair a hostile board meeting. On her passenger seat lay a crisp brown leather briefcase. Inside were three things: a copy of the paternity test results, a letter from Delilah Sterling's law firm, formally notifying Justin of the impending divorce proceedings on the grounds of adultery, and a second, much thicker manila envelope. This one contained the preliminary findings from Delilah's forensic accountant. It was Eleanor's own trump card, and it was far more devastating than she could have ever imagined. She checked her watch. Justin's keynote speech would be ending soon. The live auction would begin the moment of peak attention and press focus. It was time. She picked up the briefcase, her hand steady her heart, a cold, hard stone in her chest. The doorman hailed a cab for her. "The Pierre Hotel, please," she said to the driver, her voice a calm, level whisper against the backdrop of the humming city. The energy in the ballroom was at its peak. Justin had just concluded his speech with a pledge of $5 million from his personal fortune, and the room erupted in a standing ovation. He stepped down from the stage, his face flushed with triumph, and walked directly to Scarlett, pulling her into a brief, possessive kiss that was captured by a dozen flashing cameras. It was a calculated act, a public branding. "She is with me." The auctioneer, a fast-talking man with a silver gavel, took the stage to commence the charity auction. The first item was a week-long stay at a private villa in Tuscany. The bidding was spirited, the paddles flying up. Justin, feeling magnanimous, entered the fray, his easy smile never leaving his face. It was in this moment of peak celebration that Eleanor Croft arrived. She didn't storm in. She didn't weep or shout. She entered through the main doors with the quiet, purposeful grace of someone who belonged there. The security guard at the entrance, a man who had seen her on Justin's arm at this same event for the past 3 years, simply nodded and stepped aside. A few heads turned as she walked in. Murmurs rippled through the outer tables. "Isn't that Eleanor Croft? I thought she was ill. What is she wearing? It's not a gown." She ignored them, her eyes fixed on one point across the vast room. Table 1, where her husband was sitting with his arm draped casually over the back of Scarlett Vance's chair. Justin was in the middle of a bidding war with a rival CEO, laughing as he raised his paddle. 100,000, he boomed to appreciative applause. Scarlett saw her first. Her smile faltered, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. She nudged Justin, her voice a low hiss. "Jules, look!" Justin turned, his own smile freezing on his face. It was as if the temperature in the room had dropped 20 degrees. He saw Eleanor, not as the mousy, compliant wife he had left at home, but as a stranger. Her composure was absolute, her expression unreadable. She wasn't looking at him with hurt or anger, but with a chillingly detached focus, like a scientist observing a specimen. He slowly lowered his bidding paddle. The auctioneer, sensing the sudden shift in the room's atmosphere, stumbled over his words. "Do I hear 105? 100 and... The whispers grew louder, spreading like wildfire from table to table. The clinking of glasses and cutlery ceased. A heavy, expectant silence began to fall over the grand ballroom. Eleanor continued her slow, deliberate walk, her heels clicking softly on the polished marble floor. It was the only sound in the cavernous space. She stopped when she reached their table. She didn't look at the other guests seated there, the senator, the bank president, their stunned wives. She looked first at Justin, then let her gaze drift to Scarlett. "Justin," she said, her voice perfectly level, carrying easily in the silent room. "Scarlett, you both look so happy." Scarlett, recovering her composure, gave a tight, condescending smile. She thought she understood. This was the pathetic, scorned wife come to make a scene. "Eleanor," she said, her tone dripping with false pity, "I don't think this is the time or the place." "On the contrary," Eleanor replied, her eyes locking onto Scarlett's, "I think this is the perfect time, and this is most certainly the place." Justin finally found his voice. He stood up, attempting to take control, to manage the situation. He tried for a tone of gentle concern, the one he always used when he was gaslighting her. "Ellie, sweetheart, you should be at home resting. You're not well. Let's go outside and talk." He reached for her arm. Eleanor took a single step back, just out of his reach. The small movement was a definitive rejection, a severing. "Don't call me that," she said, her voice dropping an octave, losing its conversational tone and gaining a razor's edge. "And I am not going anywhere with you. I'm here to deliver something." She placed her leather briefcase on the table with a soft final thud. The sound seemed to echo in the silent hall. Every eye was on her, on the briefcase, on the unfolding drama that was infinitely more compelling than any auction. The press photographers, sensing blood in the water, began to edge forward, their lenses trained on the trio at table 1. Eleanor's fingers went to the latches on the briefcase. "Justin, you've always been a man who values clarity and data. You built your empire on it. You believe in irrefutable proof." She snapped open the first latch. The click was as loud as a gunshot. "So I thought it was only fair that I bring you some." She snapped open the second. With both latches open, Eleanor lifted the lid of the briefcase. She didn't rush. Her movements were economical and precise. She reached inside and pulled out the first item, a single crisp sheet of paper protected in a plastic sleeve. It was the letter from Delilah Sterling's law firm. She slid it across the white linen tablecloth until it stopped directly in front of Justin's plate. "This is for you, Justin. It's a notice of my intent to file for divorce on the grounds of adultery. I believe the legal term is marital misconduct. My attorney, Delilah Sterling, will be in touch with your legal team on Monday morning to discuss the dissolution of our assets. All of them." Justin stared at the letterhead, the name Sterling Black and Associates seeming to leap off the page. He knew the name. Everyone knew the name. It was a name that meant scorched earth litigation. His mask of concern evaporated, replaced by a flash of pure fury. "You can't be serious, Eleanor. You're going to try and humiliate me. Here, humiliation. Eleanor's laugh was short and devoid of humor. You have no idea what that word means. Not yet. Her hand went back into the briefcase. This time she withdrew the paternity test results. She held the document up for a moment, letting the letterhead of the American Genetics Laboratory be seen by anyone watching. You see, Justin, she continued, her voice a clinical, steady drone that cut through the tension. When I discovered I was pregnant with our child, I was overjoyed. But then I discovered a few other things as well. And I started to have doubts. Not about my fidelity, of course, but about yours. And more importantly, about the kind of man who would be father to my child. A collective gasp went through the room. Pregnant. The word hung in the air, charged and explosive. Scarlett's face went pale. She looked from Eleanor's barely there bump to Justin's thunderous expression, her mind reeling. Eleanor placed the lab report on the table beside the lawyer's letter. This, she announced, her voice rising so everyone in the room could hear, is a non-invasive prenatal paternity test. My blood, your DNA from a sample I procured from your toothbrush. The results confirmed 3 days ago show a 99.999% probability that you, Justin Croft, are the father of my unborn child. She finally turned her full attention to Scarlett, whose smugness had dissolved into a mask of stunned disbelief. So I want to congratulate you, Scarlett. You've been sleeping with a married man, but not just any married man. You've been sleeping with a married man who is about to become a father, with his wife. The room erupted into a cacophony of shocked whispers and frantic murmuring. Photographers pushed forward their flashes, firing in a blinding volley. This was no longer a society scandal. It was a bombshell. Scarlett felt the world tilt on its axis. Pregnant. Eleanor was pregnant. All of Justin's promises, his claims of a dead marriage. How could that be true if they were sleeping together? If she was carrying his baby? The foundation of her entire fantasy crumbled in that instant. He had lied. He had lied about everything. But desperation and fury are powerful forces. Scarlett stood up her chair, scraping harshly against the floor. Her voice trembled, but she forced it into a shout. You think that means anything? You think that will keep him? She placed a hand on her own stomach, a gesture of pure, wild defiance. It doesn't matter, because so am I. The second bombshell detonated in the room, even more powerful than the first. The noise died instantly, replaced by a vacuum of absolute shock. Even Eleanor, for all her planning, was momentarily stunned. She had suspected, but to hear it confirmed here now, it was a new level of depravity. Justin Croft stood frozen between the two women, a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming train wreck he had engineered. His pregnant wife on one side, his pregnant mistress on the other. His public coronation had become his public execution. His eyes darted around the room, seeing not adoration, but morbid curiosity and contempt on the faces of his peers. His kingdom was burning down around him, and he was standing in the ashes. Scarlett looked at him, her eyes pleading, expecting him to choose her to defend her. Tell her, Jules. Tell her that you love me, that our baby is the one you want. Justin opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was trapped. There was no right answer, no clever escape. But Eleanor wasn't finished. The first 2 documents were for the heart. The third was for the jugular. Actually, Scarlett, Eleanor said, her voice regaining its icy composure as she reached back into her briefcase. I don't think he's going to be much of a father to either of our children. Because it turns out, this isn't the only thing he's been lying about. She pulled out the thick manila envelope, the one from the forensic accountant, and dropped it onto the center of the table. It landed with a heavy, ominous thud. "This," Eleanor announced to the silent captive audience, "is about his business." The sight of the third envelope, thick and bulging with documents, seemed to break Justin's paralysis. A primal fear deeper and colder than mere social ruin flashed in his eyes. "Eleanor, stop!" he hissed, his voice a raw, desperate whisper. "Don't do this. We can talk about this privately." "We're long past private conversations, Justin," Eleanor replied, her voice ringing with clarity. She tapped the thick envelope. "You told me I never understood your ambition. You were right. I never understood that your ambition was built on a foundation of fraud." She looked out at the sea of stunned faces at the journalists, scribbling furiously, and the cameras recording every second. She was no longer just speaking to Justin or Scarlett. She was speaking to the world. "My husband, the celebrated visionary Justin Croft, didn't build Innovate Dynamics alone. He had a co-founder, a brilliant programmer named David Brown. Many of you in the tech world might remember him. He was the true genius behind the company's core algorithm. But David was pushed out 3 years ago, forced to sell his shares for pennies on the dollar after Justin manufactured a performance review crisis." A murmur went through the tech investors in the room. They remembered David Brown, the quiet, brilliant coder who had simply vanished from the scene. "But David didn't just disappear," Eleanor continued. "He was silenced. What this envelope contains is evidence compiled by my accountants over the last few weeks of systematic wire fraud and securities fraud. Justin has been siphoning money from Innovate Dynamics through a series of offshore shell corporations, the same kind of corporation he used to buy the condo he shares with Ms. Vance." She turned her gaze back to Scarlett, whose face was now a canvas of horror and confusion. "And you, Scarlett, you weren't just the other woman. You were a pawn. Justin promoted you to head of marketing for a reason. You had access to sensitive investor relations data. This evidence shows multiple transfers from one of Justin's shell accounts into an account in your name, timed perfectly with major stock fluctuations. He didn't just make you his mistress. He made you his accomplice." Scarlett swayed on her feet, grabbing the table for support. "No, that's not true. The money. He said it was a bonus. For my performance. Was your performance passing confidential acquisition targets to him 10 minutes before he made a private trade?" Eleanor countered, her voice merciless. "Because that's what the transaction logs show." Scarlett's world was imploding. The love affair, the promise of a future, it was all a lie, a cover for something far uglier. She wasn't his partner. She was his tool, a disposable asset, with a convenient paper trail leading right to her door. Justin lunged for the envelope, a snarl twisting his handsome features into something ugly. "You're lying. This is insane. She's hysterical." But Eleanor was prepared. Before Justin's fingers could touch the documents, 2 large men in dark suits stepped forward from the side of the room. They weren't hotel security. They were part of the private detail Delilah Sterling had insisted on hiring. One of them intercepted Justin's arm with practiced ease. "I wouldn't do that, Mr. Croft," the man said calmly. Eleanor's voice cut through the chaos. "It's all in there. The account numbers in the Cayman Islands, the falsified invoices, the IP logs from the trades, and copies have already been sent to 2 places. He can't charm his way out of the Securities and Exchange Commission and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York." That was the final blow. Not just a marital dispute, not just a messy affair, but federal crimes, the kind that came with frozen assets, public indictments, and prison sentences. The name Justin Croft had built into a monument of success had just been reduced to rubble. The ballroom was in chaos. People were on their feet, shouting, recording on their phones. The gala was over. The legend of Justin Croft was over. Justin stood, held in place by the security guard, his face ashen. He looked at Eleanor, truly seeing her for the first time in years. He saw not the quiet, agreeable wife, but a strategist, a queen who had just checkmated him on a board he didn't even know they were playing on. He had thought he was the predator, the master of his universe. But he had been the fool, and he had created his own destroyer. Eleanor picked up her briefcase. Her work here was done. She gave Scarlett one last long look, not of triumph, but of something akin to pity. "He was never going to leave me for you," she said, her voice soft now, almost a whisper. "He was never going to leave the woman whose family money and social standing gave him his start. You were just a convenience, a temporary distraction, and now you're a liability he can no longer afford." With that, Eleanor Croft turned her back on the wreckage of her husband's life and walked away. She moved through the stunned, parting crowd, her head held high, her steps even and sure. She didn't look back. She was walking toward her future, and for the first time in a very long time, it was entirely her own. The fallout from the Croft Foundation charity ball was immediate and spectacular. By morning, the story was on the front page of every major newspaper and the lead item on every news channel. "The Gala of the Damned," one tabloid called it. The footage shot on guests' phones went viral, a real-life soap opera of lust, greed, and betrayal, played out in high definition. Justin Croft was arrested 2 days later. The SEC and the FBI, armed with the meticulously organized evidence provided by Eleanor's team, moved swiftly. His assets were frozen, his passport confiscated. The charming tech mogul was photographed in handcuffs, his face pale and haggard, a stark contrast to the confident philanthropist he had been just 48 hours earlier. Innovate Dynamics' stock plummeted, and the board of directors convened an emergency meeting, swiftly voting to remove him as CEO. Scarlett Vance found herself in her own personal hell. Subpoenaed by federal investigators, she was caught between a rock and a hard place. The money in her account was undeniable, and Justin, in a desperate attempt to save himself, immediately pointed the finger at her, claiming she was the mastermind behind the insider trading scheme. Facing serious charges and the reality that she had been utterly played, Scarlett did the only thing she could. She hired a lawyer and agreed to cooperate fully with the prosecution in exchange for a plea deal. Her career was over, her reputation destroyed, and she now faced the prospect of raising a child alone forever, linked to the biggest scandal of the decade. Eleanor, however, was insulated from the chaos she had unleashed. Under the shrewd guidance of Delilah Sterling, she navigated the storm with precision. Her prenuptial agreement, combined with the clear evidence of Justin's financial fraud and marital infidelity, gave her immense leverage. More than that, her initial seed money and her family's early investments in Innovate Dynamics made her a significant shareholder. With Justin removed and the company in crisis, the board was in disarray. They needed stability, a clean break from the past, and a leader who wouldn't spook the already terrified investors. To the surprise of the entire financial world, Eleanor, backed by a consortium of early investors her father had known for years, made a bid for control. She wasn't the quiet background wife anymore. In the depositions and board meetings, she was sharp, articulate, and deeply knowledgeable about the company's foundational technology, something she had made a point to learn during the early years. She presented a clear, decisive plan to restructure the company, oust the corrupt executives loyal to Justin, and re-establish trust with a new era of transparency. The board, desperate for a lifeline, agreed. Eleanor Croft was named interim CEO of Innovate Dynamics. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in the same office where Justin had once reigned. The view of Central Park was the same, but the woman looking out was entirely different. She was no longer the wife of a powerful man. She was the powerful man, or rather, the powerful woman. The company under her leadership had stabilized. She had brought back David Brown, Justin's brilliant and wronged co-founder, appointing him Chief Technology Officer, and publicly restoring his legacy. Together, they were rebuilding not on lies and ego, but on genuine innovation and integrity. Her hand rested on her now prominently rounded stomach. She felt the baby kick a strong, reassuring flutter. This child would be born into a very different world than the one she had imagined. It would not be a gilded cage, but a world built on its mother's strength and resilience. There was no bitterness in her heart, only a quiet, fierce determination. She had been betrayed, but she had refused to be a victim. She had taken the shattered pieces of her life and forged them into a crown. A new email pinged on her computer. It was from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Justin Croft, facing overwhelming evidence against him, had accepted a plea bargain, 15 years in a federal prison. Eleanor read the email, took a deep breath, and then closed the laptop. She didn't feel triumph or joy, only a sense of finality. That chapter was over. She turned away from the window and walked back to her desk, a stack of engineering blueprints awaiting her review. She had a company to run, a future to build, and a child to raise. And for the first time, she was doing it all on her own terms. The mistress was gone, the millionaire was in chains, and the wife was just getting started. The 6 months that followed the gala were a blur of depositions, board meetings, and product line overhauls. Eleanor worked with a relentless surgical focus, excising the rot of Justin's regime from Innovate Dynamics. She was respected and in some corners feared. She moved through the world as a titan, a woman forged in the fires of betrayal. But every evening when she returned to the silent, cavernous penthouse, the echoes of her old life remained. She would catch her reflection in the dark panoramic windows, her pregnant form silhouetted against the glittering city, and feel a profound and unsettling solitude. The victory had been absolute, but the cost was a life devoid of the softness she had once known. Her son was born on a crisp autumn morning, a healthy 7-pound boy, with a startling shock of dark hair, just like Justin's. She named him Ethan. Holding him for the first time, Eleanor felt a fierce, primal wave of love that was so powerful it almost brought her to her knees. It was a love untainted by the past, a pure, clean slate. In Ethan's tiny, perfect face, she saw not the man who had betrayed her, but the future she had fought for. He was her true legacy. It was 2 weeks after Ethan's birth that Delilah Sterling called. Her tone was unusually hesitant. "Eleanor, I've received a rather delicate inquiry." "From whom?" Eleanor asked, rocking Ethan's bassinet with her foot as she reviewed a quarterly report. "From Scarlett Vance's attorney," Delilah said. "Ms. Vance gave birth to a boy last week. A paternity test confirmed Justin is the father. He's been named Leo." Eleanor stopped rocking. A cold stillness settled over her. She knew logically that this was inevitable, but the reality of it, of another child, a half-brother to her son born of the same deceit, was a punch to the gut. "What does she want, Delilah? She's not asking for money, not directly." Delilah clarified. Her plea deal requires she forfeit all assets tied to the fraud. She's penniless and unemployable. Her attorney is floating a balloon, seeing if a private arrangement can be made for the child's welfare to keep him from becoming a ward of the state or a casualty of the public record. Eleanor's first instinct was a flare of hot, white anger. Let her suffer. Let her deal with the consequences of her choices. It was Scarlett's smug smile at the gala, her possessive hand on Justin's arm, that flashed in Eleanor's mind. Tell her to go through the courts like anyone else. Eleanor said, her voice hard. Justin's remaining assets are tied up in restitution and lawsuits. She can get in line. I can do that, Delilah said quietly. But Eleanor, the child, Leo Vance, he is Ethan's brother. This will follow them their entire lives. The press will have a field day when they discover Justin Croft has 2 sons born weeks apart, one raised in a penthouse, the other in poverty. The narrative, it's not a good one for the new public face of Innovate Dynamics. Delilah was right. It wasn't just a personal issue. It was a matter of public relations of legacy. More than that, it was a question that pricked at the edges of her conscience. What was her victory, for if it created another victim? Could she look her son in the eye in 20 years and tell him she had allowed his brother to grow up with nothing, all because of a war that was already won? I want to see her. Eleanor said the words surprising even herself. I would strongly advise against it, Delilah countered. Alone. No lawyers, Eleanor insisted. Set it up, a neutral location, tomorrow. The meeting took place in a private room at a quiet, discreet hotel in the West Village. Eleanor arrived first, ordering a pot of tea. When Scarlett walked in, Eleanor was shocked at her appearance. The vibrant, predatory woman from the gala was gone. In her place was a pale, exhausted-looking new mother, dressed in ill-fitting clothes, dark circles under her eyes. She clutched a worn handbag to her chest like a shield. She looked broken. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across the table. Thank you for meeting me, Scarlett finally whispered, her voice hoarse. I'm not here for you, Scarlett, Eleanor said, her tone cool and measured. I'm here because our sons share a father. Scarlett flinched at the bluntness but nodded. I know, I never wanted any of this. Not like this. He told me you were getting divorced. He told me the baby, your baby, wasn't his. Eleanor felt a fresh stab of disgust at Justin's bottomless capacity for cruelty. He would have denied his own son just to keep his mistress content. What he told you is irrelevant now, Eleanor said. Tell me what you want. Tears welled in Scarlett's eyes, and this time they weren't theatrical. They were the raw, helpless tears of a person at the end of their rope. I have nothing, Eleanor. My parents won't speak to me. No one will hire me. I'm living in a tiny apartment in Queens, and I'm about to be evicted. I look at my son. I look at Leo, and he's perfect. He's an innocent baby, and he has nothing because of me. Because I was stupid enough to believe a man like Justin Croft. She took a shaky breath. I'm not asking for a handout. I will work. I'll do anything. But he deserves a chance at a decent life. Please, don't let him pay for my sins. Eleanor listened, her expression unreadable. She thought of Ethan, safe in his crib at home, surrounded by every comfort and advantage. And she thought of Leo, this other little boy, born into a storm of scandal and ruin. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. I will not give you $1, Eleanor said, and Scarlett's face fell. Any money I gave you would be seen as hush money. and I will not be tethered to you or your reputation." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "However," she continued, "the child is another matter. My lawyers will set up an irrevocable trust. It will be administered by a third-party trustee. It will provide for Leo's housing, health care, and education through college. The funds will be paid directly to the schools and providers. You will never have access to the principal. There will be a strict morality clause in the agreement. If you ever try to contact me, my son, or the press about this arrangement, the trust will be immediately dissolved. Is that understood?" Scarlett stared at her, speechless. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they were of shock and overwhelming relief. She could only nod, unable to speak. "This isn't forgiveness, Scarlett," Eleanor said, standing up, her voice firm. "And it isn't friendship. This is for the boys. It's the only clean slate I can give them. Justin created this mess, but I will not allow his legacy to be two brothers growing up as enemies or as symbols of his failure. My son will know he has a brother, and one day, if they choose, they can meet. But that will be their decision, not ours." Eleanor placed $100 bill on the table to cover the tea. "Get a good meal. Feed your son. The lawyers will be in touch." Without another word, she turned and walked out, leaving Scarlett Vance weeping quietly in the anonymous hotel room. Eleanor didn't feel pity or satisfaction. She felt clear. She had neutralized the final threat, not with vengeance, but with control. She had taken the last ugly, tangled thread of Justin's betrayal and woven it into something orderly, something she could manage. She was the architect of this new world, and in it, both of Justin Croft's sons would have a future protected from the sins of their father. This wasn't just a story about a cheating husband. It was a story about the immense power of a woman who was underestimated. Eleanor Croft could have walked away with a quiet settlement, but instead she chose to fight for the truth, not just for herself, but for her unborn child, and for everyone else her husband had deceived. It's a raw, gripping reminder that the deepest betrayals can often ignite the fiercest strength within us. What would you have done in her shoes? Could you have found the courage to not only expose the lies, but to rise from the ashes and take control of the entire empire? If this story of resilience, strategy, and ultimate vindication captivated you, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own inner strength, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true-life stories of drama, survival, and justice. Your support helps us bring these incredible tales to light. Thank you for listening.